Reimagining Success, episode 267. Are you on an accidental career path? That's the question we're asking in today's episode. And you might wonder, does it even matter? Does it matter if I haven't chosen every step along the way with great strategic intention? And maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're super happy where you've ended up and you don't mind where you will end up in the future. But if you worry that you are perhaps missing out on opportunities, if there are long hidden elements of you and your personality and preferences and passions that you would love to see come to the fore, and maybe you don't want to have those regrets in the coming years, it might be time to open up your eyes and reflect on where you've come from, where you are, and where you want to go. So are you on an accidental career path? Let's find out. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. We're heading towards Christmas here in the UK, and we've already got our tree. We are all set to be super, super festive this year. I feel like often I don't make the most of this time. And let's face it, the time after Christmas, January, February, is pretty dreary in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's quite nice to make the most of it. And obviously with young kids, it's really lovely and festive to do lots of nice things with Santa, with lights, with baking and so on. So I'm going all in this year. So I hope you are too, or at least that you're enjoying these last few weeks of 2023. As we do so, I do have a few more episodes for you to close out the year, looking at kind of career paths, career goals, fulfilling careers, and that kind of topic more generally. We're not talking about building a business specifically or marketing or even personal branding. It's really taking a step back to reflect on where you are. And I thought the question for today was interesting, which is this: are you on an accidental career path? Now, an accidental career, I think, is when you just kind of fall into something, and it's not a one-off thing, right? It could be that you study one thing, you end up doing something else. It could be that, someone you knew kind of recommended you or referred you, and you got an internship, and then that kind of led to a proper job. It could be then later on in your career that you kind of just keep getting promoted because you're so amazing at what you do, and it's not even intentional. You end up being a people manager, even though perhaps that's not what you wanted. Again, that you meet somebody or you have to move because of your spouse, and that leads to something else. So there could be a whole host of reasons why you end up on that kind of accidental career path. And you might ask, does it matter? And in fact, I did a quick Google now, and I haven't read any of the articles because I didn't want to be affected by what other people have written. But the first few articles actually were sort of positive reflections on people who fell into careers they love. So if that's you, I think if that's you, you're probably not listening to this episode in this podcast, but correct me if I'm wrong. But if that's you, that's amazing. And I think, certainly there's no point in having regrets about these things because there's nothing we can do about it. But we can have such amazing experiences. We can meet people, perhaps even loves in our life will come from work. That's one of the most common places of falling in love, right? And meeting our special someone, as it were. So that could have happened to you at meeting friends, colleagues, and learning and having all sorts of opportunities and travel and awards and who knows what else, right? Learning lots of things, which is amazing. And you know what? It's actually pretty difficult, and that's probably why we end up on an accidental career path, to plan out our career when I don't know about you, I thought I was pretty mature and grown up when I was sort of 15. But when we are that kind of age, even 18, 19, even early 20s, maybe even now, many decades later, we just don't know what we want to be when we grow up. How could we? We haven't experienced those things. We don't know what it's like to be in office. We don't, really understand. I certainly had no idea what it meant to be in a particular, vocation, if you want to call it that. And we have a very black and white view of sort of, you're going to be a vet or a doctor or a superhero or an astronaut. They're very kind of clear-cut career paths, and that doesn't even exist. It doesn't even begin to capture all the nuances of the roles that exist. And of course, we also know that many roles won't exist in 10, 20 years, just like many new roles are coming. And of course, with things like AI, artificial intelligence, shifting everything, the landscape is going to look very, very different. Not to mention the fact that most of us, if not all of us, will be pivoting and having multiple careers going forwards. So does it matter if you're on an accidental career path? Well, no. If you're having a ball of a time, if you're loving it, and you actually, as the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland says, don't mind where you end up, that's absolutely fine, right? By all means, enjoy the journey and just go with the flow, man. But I would suggest that we might be missing out on something. We might be missing out on, a lifelong ambition that we had that we've kind of forgotten about. Perhaps a drive for creativity, which is often kind of, repressed, I suppose. We're told we have to get a proper job, and so we don't pursue that more creative career path. Perhaps we're lucky enough to continue doing that as sort of a hobby or, to keep that up. But perhaps you've forgotten that long lost talent that you had, and that's quite sad. Perhaps it's just that, you're kind of just on this conveyor belt now, and you don't really care about the work you're doing, or at least you feel like, you've kind of learned what you were going to learn. It's not that challenging anymore. And now could be a good time to open up your eyes and do something a bit different. So it's just, if you're missing out on opportunities, might you have regrets later? Might you, on your deathbed, sorry to be macabre, look back and go, oh, how on earth did I spend all that time in those meetings and whatever, right? So, are you on an accidental career path? If you take the UK, and I think we're relatively unique in this regards, you tend to study one thing. So it starts really all the way back at your university degree, geography, chemistry, and then you end up working in finance or consulting, banking, whatever. And a lot of us did, human rights and development and so on, and then end up in something far more capitalist and not so altruistic. For me personally, I guess it went back to, and I was super fascinated by career paths when I was younger. I did all those career tests. I think at university, I was even careers advisor. The careers counsellor at my school, when I was considering which universities to apply to. So in the UK, you apply to 6. I think it was 6 on the UCAS application and the universities. And she helped me apply to astrophysics and medicine. I say apply. If you know anything about me, you'll know that I did not study either of those subjects. So I did not apply to those. I instead took a gap year. However, I, the whole time, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was lucky, I suppose, humble brag here, to be good at lots of different subjects. There was no clear path. It was kind of assumed that I'd go to university, and that was the academic background that my parents had. And even my mum's parents, which was unusual for her generation, had gone to university and had sort of high, I suppose I was going to say high paid. I don't think they were particularly high paid, but sort of semi-academic professional degrees. That was kind of assumed. I never really considered anything else. But not really knowing where to focus and having an obvious calling, I felt easily dissuaded by other people when they said, oh, that's not a good path, or you won't, be able to follow that, or, you should study. So I kind of was quite reactive to what other people said. I didn't do A-levels because I didn't want to just choose 3 or 4 subjects. So I ended up doing the International Baccalaureate. I say ended up, this was actually a very intentional rather than accidental choice, but I did it because I didn't want to make an intentional choice. So I studied, let's see if I can remember, English, maths, physics, and history at high levels. So that was kind of like an A-level. And then German and Swedish as standard or subsidiary level. I had wanted to study theatre studies, but unfortunately there weren't enough people who wanted to do that sniff. So there you go, accidental again, ended up doing those languages. So that's what I did at school, and then took the gap year, and then I applied to PPE, so philosophy, politics and economics, and did that at Oxford University. Again, great degree. Lots of terrible politicians have come out of my college and that degree, but I did it because it was kind of broad. I'd showed no interest in politics or economics previously. Philosophy, yes, but it was kind of a degree that allowed me to use my history, a bit of maths and science, logic and so on, so it kind of kept my options open. I then rolled on into a postgraduate degree again because I didn't know what else to do. And then my accidental career started because I applied to, 9 out of 10 jobs were at the UN, non-governmental organisations, that kind of thing. And then the sort of one job I did get and took was at Procter & Gamble in marketing. So that was sort of accidental. Now, for me, definitely, I had such an amazing time. It was the most incredible school. It's opened up so many opportunities to me since then. And I met some amazing people. You know who you are. And again, I can't really regret that time, but that was very accidental. And it did always feel like there was a disconnect between that and what I wanted to do, or where I thought that I should be. And then secondly, even actually when I made the intentional choice to leave, I kind of ended up with an accidental consulting career, because I had a couple of friends, colleagues starting up a startup. I then had other ex-P&G colleagues who moved to other companies, and they kind of brought me on as a digital marketing expert. So my skills were very much in demand. By the way, digital, I think, was a very accidental, albeit fortunate specialism. I just, for whatever reason, was promoted into that role because there was no one else. And it wasn't necessarily, I'd done lots of digital things, but it was an incredible opportunity. And obviously all marketing is digital these days. I worked with Google and Facebook and YouTube and all sorts. So I had some really amazing experiences there again. But the consulting was very much accidental. I would even almost say that the coaching was accidental insofar as I, for my own personal development, signed up to a coaching course, not because I wanted to be a coach, but because I found it really fascinating and I thought it would be useful in terms of understanding myself and my own values and sort of self-coaching, I think must have been the initial intent. And so that kind of organically led to me loving that, wanting to, support other people with that new tool and technique that I'd learned, as well as I started to write and blog about my own career process, other people came to me and asked me for help. So that kind of became the foundation of the business, the podcast, and everything that you see and hear today. So in a way, that whole path has been accidental. So that's why I'm not really criticizing it. And there were some really big wake-up calls along the way, right? Leaving P&G, of course, that was a big intentional moment, but then it's very easy to quickly go accidental again and end up doing something that isn't necessarily what you want to be doing. And then again, when I discovered coaching, again, that was kind of accidental, but the most incredible discovery, right? So, people will come to you if you're working for yourself with opportunities that perhaps you wouldn't have come up with yourself, but they're super interesting. They fit with your values, exciting opportunities that you didn't know existed. And by all means, we can take those on, right? So I'm not saying, when I'm sort of assessing, evaluating the accidental career path, I'm not saying that it's a terrible thing, and I hope you agree. But again, if you are worried about having regrets later, if you feel like there is something missing, then perhaps now is a good time to kind of reflect on the past year, but also the past decade. For me, it's 10 years since I left my marketing job, corporate marketing job. So that's a good moment, if never before, to reflect on where I've come from, and then to look into the new year and really think about, okay, how can I go about being more intentional? So, in terms of moving forwards from this discovery that we have been on an accidental career path, first of all, be compassionate with yourself. Don't regret what you've learned and experienced, because unfortunately we can't go back. I can't go back as much as I'd like to go to a different university perhaps. And I don't want to, honestly, because of course, the experiences and everything that's led me to where I am today. But, I wish I'd studied this. I wish I'd gone to that country. I wish I'd taken that job, and so on. That's not very constructive thinking. So be kind to yourself and don't worry about the past. In fact, by all means, look at the past and look at all the highlights and the amazing things you've experienced and learned thanks to those accidental choices, I'm going to call them, although they're not choices, insofar as being strategic, intentional, proactive choices. So be kind to yourself, no regrets, first of all. But secondly, let's set the intention now going forwards that we are going to be more intentional, more reflective, more proactive, and ultimately more strategic if we can be, right? So that's a new decision, new resolution, if you will, for the coming months, years to come, especially when we get to a certain age. We're like, you know what, still plenty of years left to work, but I would like to make some different choices maybe. And then you can start the process, which is going to involve a lot of, reflecting and thinking about, again, the past, thinking about the future, where you are, what you're good at, what you want, and so on. And we can talk about that, and we will in coming episodes. But just know that it's the first step of, a long journey, which will have, as the squiggly careers people say, lots of squiggles along the way, right? That's also sort of an accidental journey. Now, I don't subscribe to the fully squiggly, messy knot of movements, because I really do think we can get so much more. I'm a big fan of goals And I think we can get so much more fulfillment, not to mention then the freedom, flexibility that I talk about as well in terms of how we structure our career and our work, if we're intentional about these choices, right? And then we can't, it's very disempowering to blame the past, blame our parents, teachers, boss, whatever it is, right? Circumstances, COVID, whatever we want to blame. It's far more empowering to take ownership, to not be a passenger, but to really pilot the plane or whatever mode of transport you want to think of as the metaphor for your career. Maybe a beautiful sailing boat, a beautiful yacht here on the ocean, taking you to your dream island of paradise. Doesn't that sound lovely? So I hope this has been an interesting reflection. I know it's sort of an initial step, an initial thought, rather than an action plan, but that's often just as important, if not more important, to really reflect on, to have that awareness of what's going on, what has been going on, and then to set that intention of doing things differently in the future. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Are you on an accidental career path? Let me know. And you can, of course, message me on your favourite social channel or email me at podcast@onestepoutside.com. podcast@onestepoutside.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Are you at that point where you're asking yourself, is this really what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? And the answer is a resounding no, but you're not yet sure what you want to do instead. I get it. I was in your shoes back in 2013 when I took a good hard look at myself and my CV, and up until then I'd followed the conventional path. Good school, good university, good job. I was also single while more and more friends around me were settling down with partners and babies. Now fast forward to today and I've built a coaching and consulting business. I've published 2 books with more on the way. I've launched a podcast. But more than that, I've been able to travel the world. I've made more time for friends and family. And I've designed and shaped a location-independent business and a lifestyle that's 100% tailored to my own personal definition of success. Oh, and I've also moved countries, I've fallen in love, and I've had 2 beautiful little children. So if you want to redefine what success looks like for you, then get in touch to book a call, onestepoutside.com/call, onestepoutside.com/call, and I'd like to help you do just that.